I'm not around, have you found? I'm always on your mind.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Boiling Point podcast. This is episode 43. What are the Nephilim? I know you are all very eager to get to this topic. We've been waiting to do it for a couple of episodes now, while Uncle Mark and Pastor Gavin and I have been covering a number of other different topics, but we've been kind of heading in this direction, and right on the road right now in this direction that we have been heading is the Nephilim. And what are they? We're going to explain to you about what they are, where they come from, and that type of thing. Thank you, Marcus Fredrickson, for playing us in and giving us music here at the Boiling Point podcast. Make sure you check out his station. It is available in the description. Listen to his music. It's very good. Please make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel. We're also on Rumble. Look for the Boiling Point podcast. If you're currently watching this on YouTube, Rumble is where we post episodes in its entirety. You can also support us by checking out our apparel storefronts at bonfire.com/store/the Boiling Point podcast. Get yourself a Boiling Point podcast mug. We have a reusable grocery tote bag, t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, hoodies. We also now have hats and beanies available on the storefront, so make sure you get some of them. I know it's springtime, but get them ahead of time before next winter. You can also find us on Parler. We are on Parler. Now the Parler is back active again. You can find us there, the Boiling Point podcast. And I think that's all of the opening stuff that I have to cover now. That takes 2 hours to get through. Uncle Mark is our special guest on this episode. He's going to take us through the Nephilim and tell us what they are. Uncle Mark, welcome back to the Boiling Point podcast. I'm very glad that you could come back again so soon and continue with what we've been talking about.
Yes, hello. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. We're going to talk about what are the Nephilim. Now, the actual word is only found twice in the scriptures, Genesis 6:16 and Numbers 13:13. The Genesis 6 one, of course, gives the explanation of who they are and where they come from. Now, there's two lines of thought on this. One is that the Nephilim are the rebel angels, like the Anunnaki. I don't agree with that. I think the Nephilim are the offspring of the fallen angels, and we'll get into that a little further, and we'll see why. Now, the fallen angels and the Anunnaki, the Sumerians, I believe, are the same group of fallen angels, but the basic biblical story is expounded on a little more in the book of Enoch, the book of the Giants, and the book of Jubilees. And we'll look at a little bit of that shortly. But their fathers, basically, they were fallen angels, okay? They had a plan. They wanted to take over the earth for themselves, make empires, and rule over humanity, and it worked for a while. Now, the first kings were the hybrid children of the Nephilim, okay? They weren't there, oh, well, I want a family too. That wasn't the intent. It was a planned invasion to deliberately create a hybrid, to corrupt our human DNA into something not fully human and take over creation. They wanted to destroy the seed of the woman and prevent the Messiah from coming. So they wanted to set up their own creation, okay? They
had their own agenda.
Right, they had their own agenda.
This was not just to spread anarchy or misery. They actually had a plan. Then, is what you're saying? There was a plan behind it.
Yeah, they weren't just like, oh, gee, children, that sounds cool. No, they had a plan. It was a planned deception. I believe that the children were the Nephilim giants. The angelics were a different thing altogether. The Nephilim were their children. Now, they were violent, superhuman offspring. They were produced when wicked angels mated with the daughters of Cain during the days of Jared. They were called the men of old, the men of renown. They were the titans, the demigods. Now, the fathers, they're called the sons of God. In the Hebrew, it's B'nai Elohim. And that's only used, it's only ever used to describe the angelics. We find it in Job 1:6, Job 2:1, and Job 38:7. Now, the Peter and Jude, they both say that the sin of the angels was going after strange flesh. And they also tell how they were judged because of it. Now, the angels meeting with the daughters of Cain and creating a race of giants, that's repeated over and over throughout all the world's religions and their mythologies. It was a constant opinion of all writers of antiquity. This thing about, the godly line of Seth mating with the ungodly line of Cain, that's a recent invention. There was no such opinion back in antiquity. This was a constant opinion of all writers of antiquity, that they were angelics that mated with the daughters of Cain and produced the giants. Now, they were all over the world, not just in the promised land, the biblical lands. They were worldwide. They were causing war, bloodshed. They were wreaking havoc everywhere. They were using sorcery. They were creating forbidden spiritual practices, and they were tampering genetically with not only humans but the animal kingdom as well. Now, it was all done in an attempt to thwart and corrupt God's creation. Okay, now the book of Jasher. I'll read a little excerpt out of the book of Jasher for you real quick, and I'll get a little more complex than this later, but it says, and their judges and rulers, which were giants at the time, went to the daughters of men and took their wives by force from their husbands according to their choice, and of those days took from the cattle of the earth, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order therein to provoke the Lord. And God saw the whole earth, and it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways upon earth, all men and all animals. That's the book of Jasher, chapter 8. So, we see that not only was their plan to corrupt the human race, but they were corrupting the genetics of everything. They were trying to basically destroy God's creation and mold it into an image of their own. So,
now this is pre-flood, correct?
This was pre-flood, yes.
Yes, okay. Just wanted to give some people some perspective on timeline here, because a lot of what we talk about is ancient time and early days of the Bible, and it's hard to lose track of.
Yeah, we're pre-flood right now. Now, the giants in pre-flood were so much taller than the giants after the flood. These guys were incredibly tall. They compared them to the cedars of Lebanon. The cedars of Lebanon grew 100 foot tall. So this is from the Creation Network, okay? Henry Morris, who did the Genesis record, I have a lot of respect for the man, and I'm going to quote some stuff that he had said. Now, he said, concerning sons of God, he said, the only obvious and natural meaning without such clarification is that these beings were sons of God rather than of men, because they had been created, not born. Such a description, of course, would apply only to Adam, Luke 3:38, and to the angels whom God had directly created, Psalms 148:2 and 5, Psalms 104:4, Colossians 1:6. He's given biblical backing for his opinion.
Yeah.
The actual phrase Benai Elohim is used 3 other times, all in the very ancient book of Job, 1:6, 2:1, and 38:7, which I said, and then we're going to go over one of them anyway. There is no doubt at all that in these passages the meaning applies exclusively to the angels. A very similar form, Bar Elohim, is used in Daniel 3:25 and also refers either to an angel or to a theosmate. The term Sons of the Mighty, Ben Elohim, is used in Psalm 29:1 and also Psalm 89:6, and again refers to angels. Thus, there seems no reasonable doubt that, insofar as the language itself is concerned, the intent of the writer was to convey the thought of angels, fallen angels, no doubt, since they were acting in opposition to God's will. That pretty well sums up, my thoughts on the subject too. These weren't the godly line of Seth mating with the ungodly line of Cain. That happens all the time and throughout history, and it's never produced giants, Yeah. So now he says about the Genesis flood and afterward. I'm going to go into this afterward, but I'm going to quote Morris because I respect him as an author. He says, there were giants also after that in the days of the Canaanites, and these were likewise known as, among other things, the Nephilim. In Numbers 13:33, which we'll go into. Humanly speaking, they were descended from Anak, and so they were also known as the Anakim. These people were, of course, known to Moses, and it was probably he who editorially inserted the phrase, and also after that, into Noah's original record here in Genesis 6:4. Moses probably also inserted the information that these were the mighty men of old, men of renown, men whose exploits of strength and violence had made them famous in song and fable in all nations in the ages following the flood. To rebellious men of the later times, they were revered as great heroes, but in God's sight, they were merely ungodly men of violence and evil. So that's a pretty good description of those after the flood. Now, there were several tribes that they encountered. There was 5 kings in Abraham's day. We'll go into that a little bit, but some of the name of these tribes were the Raphaim. They're known as the Titans, the children of Rapha. The Zamzim or Zamzamims, which means terrible ones. The Emim, the Horites, and the Anakim, which means crushing tyrants. The tribe of the Anakim are directly connected with the Nephilim in a false report that the spies described in Numbers 13:33. Context of the passage suggests that the other tribes of giants were relatives of the Anakim or other lines of Nephilim, particularly the Raphaim, whose giant descendants is described as living in Gath along with the Anakim Goliath and Lamai. The Rephaim are giants. In fact, these people seem generally described as being tall or unusually large, and seem to have been thus matched with the Nephilim based on the English rendering of giants in Genesis 6. The tribe of Anakim were descended from a giant named Anak, who was the son or grandson of a giant named Arba, from which the ancient city of Hebron was originally called Kirath Arba, or the city of Arba, because Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. The tribe was so tall that the weak-kneed spies reported we were like grasshoppers to them. So, the Septuagint, it reads angels of God. Sons of God isn't even used in the Septuagint. It just says angels of God. So, who were these angels? Enoch names them, and we'll go into his both of these references. First, we're going to go into Jubilees, what they say about the sons of God and the Nephilim. Now, Jubilees 4:15 says, "And in the second week of the 10th Jubilee, Mahalalel took unto him his wife Diana, the daughter of Barchiel, the daughter of his father's brother, and she bare him a son in the 3rd week in the 6th year, and he called his name Jared. For in those days the angels of the Lord descended on the earth, those who are named the Watchers, that they should instruct the children of men, and that they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth." Now, okay, they said, what the Jubilees is saying, that these angels, they were descended on the earth, that were named Watchers. They were supposed to instruct the children of men, and that they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth. That was their mission. That was what they were supposed to do, okay? Says, "And it came to pass when the children of men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the angels of God saw them on a certain year of this Jubilee, that they were beautiful to look upon. And they took themselves wives of all whom they chose. And they bare unto them sons, and they were giants. And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted its way, alike men and cattle and beasts and birds and everything that walks on the earth. All of them corrupted their ways and their orders. And they began to devour each other. And lawlessness increased on the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of all men was thus evil continually. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, and all flesh had corrupted its orders, and all that were upon the earth had wrought all manner of evil before his eyes. And he said he would destroy man and all flesh upon the face of the earth which he had created. But Noah found grace before the eyes of the Lord. And against the angels whom he had sent upon the earth," okay, I want to repeat that again. "And the angels whom he had sent upon the earth," and I'll get to why I'm repeating that. "He was exceedingly wroth, and he gave commandment to root them out of all their domain and all their dominion, and he bade us to bind them in the midst of the earth. And behold, they are bound in the midst of them, and they are kept separate. And against their sons went forth a command from before his face, that they should be smitten with the sword, and be removed from under heaven. And he said, My spirit will not always abide on man, for they also are flesh, and their days shall be 120 years. And he sent his sword into their midst, that they should each should slay his neighbor. And they began to slay each other till they all fell by the sword and were destroyed from the earth. Now, Enoch tells us a little something more interesting about that. Enoch says that they would be forced to watch their children destroy each other, to watch the giants destroy each other. So anyway, let's go to Enoch. Now, that was Jubilees. This is what Enoch had to say. It happened after the sons of men had multiplied in those days that daughters were born to them, elegant and beautiful. And when the angels, the sons of heaven, beheld them, they became enamored of them, saying to each other, Come, let us select for ourselves wives from the prodigy of men, and let us beget children. Then their leader, Samyaza, said to them, I fear that you may perhaps be indisposed of the performance of this enterprise, that I alone shall suffer for so grievous a crime. But they answered him and said, We all swear and bind ourselves by mutual execrations that we will not change our intention, but execute our projected undertaking. Then they all swore all together and all bound themselves by mutual execrations. Their whole number was 200 who descended upon Ardus, which is the top of Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is what we would call it. That mountain thereby is called Hermon because they had sworn upon it and bound themselves by mutual execrations. These are the name of their chiefs. Samyaza, who was their leader. I'm not going to name all their names. There's a bunch of names. Enoch names them. He names the leaders and the troops, that were all in command of 10 each. So then he took wives, each choosing for himself, whom they began to approach and with whom they cohabited, teaching them sorcery, incantations, and the dividing of roots and trees. And the women conceiving brought forth giants, whose stature was each 300 cubits. These devoured all which the labor of men produced, until it became impossible to feed them. Then they turned themselves against men in order to devour them. And they began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes, to eat their flesh one after another, and to drink their blood. Now, their flesh one after another. R.H. Charles notes that refers to the destruction of one class of giants over another by another. In other words, they start eating each other too. So they ate all the food, and when they ate all the food and the product, they started eating people, and then they started eating each other too after they killed each other in battle, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's what it means, one another's flesh. Then the earth reproved the unrighteousness. Moreover, Azazel taught the men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, the fabrication of mirrors, and the workmanship of bracelets and ornaments, the use of paint, the beautifying of the eyebrows, the use of stones of every valuable and select kind, and all sorts of dyes, so that the world became altered. Impiety increased, fornication multiplied, and they transgressed and corrupted all their ways. Amazarach taught all the sorcerers, the divider of roots. Amirs taught the solution of sorcery. Barakayal taught the observation of the stars. Akabil taught signs. Tamiel taught astronomy. And Astradadal taught the motion of the moon. And men, being destroyed, cried out, and their voice reached to heaven. That kind of sums up, between the two of them, it kind of sums up what was going on out there, right?
Yeah.
Now, what I'm going to read from here, who were these 200 angels? And you saw them little references that I was giving you there. What I'm going to read from is it's not a well-known work. It's called the Kebra Nagast. It's a 14th century Ethiopian work. Now,
well, how about before we get to that, actually, we are going to have people switch over to Rumble, because if you're still watching on YouTube or Facebook, you need to switch over to Rumble right now if you want to see more of the episode. Yep, Uncle Mark and I are going to talk more about this. He just covered a lot of information in a short time. We're going to break some of that down. We're going to go more in depth with some of it. We're going to talk about some scripture. And we got pictures, so make sure you turn into Rumble. And if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, thank you very much. But we're going to have to let you go. See ya.
yeah.
The gift you gave so that we might be